The air in the River County Courthouse was thick and stale, smelling of old paper, cheap floor polish, and a faint, underlying sourness that might have been despair. It was a room designed to feel oppressive, with dark wood paneling that absorbed the light and a ceiling so high it seemed to swallow sound. And on this sweltering Tuesday morning, the atmosphere was even heavier than usual, charged with the silent, simmering authority of one man, Judge Marcus Thorne. For 2 decades, Thorne had ruled this courtroom not as a hall of justice, but as his personal fiefdom. He was a man who had clawed his way to the bench and now guarded his power with a bulldog's ferocity. He wasn't born to privilege. He had manufactured it, and he held a special kind of contempt for anyone who didn't show what he considered the proper deference. His brand of tyranny wasn't loud. It was a quiet, grinding pressure applied through condescending remarks, loaded questions, and the wearying, soul-crushing weight of his impatience. And then she walked in. She entered not with a bang, but with a profound and unsettling stillness. She was a tall woman, her bearing straight as a surveyor's rod, dressed in a simple, perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Her hair was pulled back, her face was unadorned, and her eyes, dark, intelligent, and unnervingly calm, swept the room once. It wasn't the look of a stranger. It was the look of a threat assessor identifying every exit, every potential obstacle, every variable in the equation. She moved with an absolute economy of motion, taking her seat on a bench in the 3rd row and folding her hands in her lap. Then she waited. To the bored bailiffs and the anxious lawyers, she was just another name on the docket, Anya Sharma, the sole civilian witness to a brutal, late-night altercation between 2 sheriff's deputies and a teenage boy. That was the extent of their knowledge. What no one in that room could possibly comprehend was that the woman, sitting in quiet composure, had spent 12 years in the U.S. Army's most secretive echelons. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a former Delta Force operator, a specialist in asymmetric warfare, a woman who had led missions in environments so hostile they were officially designated as non-existent. After her official service, she hadn't retired. She had transitioned her skills, repurposed for a clandestine unit within the Defense Intelligence Agency. Her name, Anya Sharma, was real. Her current occupation was not. She wasn't here to fight, not in the way she was trained. She was here as a private citizen, to speak a sequence of facts. But Anya knew better than anyone that in a room built on lies, the truth is the most explosive weapon of all. And Judge Marcus Thorne, a man intoxicated by his own authority, had no idea he was about to face an expert in dismantling fortified positions, one carefully chosen word at a time. Before we witness the deconstruction of a tyrant, let us know where you're joining us from in the comments. And if you believe in the power of quiet strength, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. This is one story you won't want to miss. Let's move this along. Judge Thorne grumbled, his voice scraping across the quiet room. He glared down from the bench as Anya was called to the stand. He didn't use her name. He simply gestured impatiently toward the witness box. You're the witness in the matter of the state versus Deputies Miller and Croft. I am, Anya said. Her voice was low and even devoid of any discernible emotion. Thorne leaned back, a smug smile touching his lips. It wasn't a friendly expression. It was the look of a man who already knew the outcome of the game. Let's keep this concise, shall we? We're all aware of the dynamics at play in that part of town. The thinly veiled prejudice settled over the room like a shroud. At the prosecution table, a young deputy district attorney named Leo Martinez flinched, a barely perceptible tightening around his eyes. He had family in law enforcement. He also had a conscience, and the two were in constant, painful conflict in Judge Thorne's courtroom. Anya, however, remained a portrait of unnerving serenity. Her internal monologue was running a different script. Subject exhibits confirmation bias. He has predetermined the narrative. The objective is not to convince him, but to render his opinion irrelevant by establishing an unbreakable chain of factual dominance. She began her testimony, her words precise and clinical, painting a clear picture of the incident. She hadn't even finished describing the initial stop when Thorne cut in his voice, dripping with condescension. "Ma'am, I asked for what you saw, not a novel. Can we get to the point?" Anya paused. She met his gaze for a single, steady second, then continued her pace, and level of detail unchanged. He interrupted again a few minutes later. "You have an extraordinary memory for details. Most people in a stressful situation get confused." She ignored the bait. She detailed the moment one of the deputies, Miller, grabbed the teenager, the disproportionate force, the way the boy's head hit the side of the car. Thorne sighed, a loud, theatrical sound of performative boredom. "And you saw all of this with perfect clarity. At night? Were you using night vision goggles?" The question was meant to belittle, to reduce her to a hysterical or unreliable observer. "I was 15 feet away," Anya replied, her voice as flat and hard as slate. "The area was illuminated by 2 streetlights and the headlights of my vehicle. My vision is corrected to 20/20. He waved a dismissive hand. "Yes, yes. Just stick to the point. No embellishments." Her testimony had been the very definition of unembellished. But Thorne wasn't listening to her words. He was trying to control her presence. He was used to witnesses who cowered, who grew flustered, who raised their voices in frustration. He was used to breaking people, but Anya wasn't breaking. She wasn't even bending. Her stillness was beginning to agitate him. He mistook her composure for passivity, a fatal miscalculation. Her calm wasn't surrender, it was observation. It was the patience of a predator. The lead prosecutor, a man whose ambition far outstripped his talent, rose to cross-examine. He approached the stand with a swagger that suggested he was merely performing a necessary but simple final act. "Ms. Sharma," he began, "you claim to have witnessed the entire encounter. Is that correct?" "It is." "And you are absolutely certain of the sequence you've described?" "I am." He smiled, a slick, predatory expression. "You testified with remarkable specificity that Deputy Miller used a closed-fist strike to the teenager's ribs before the boy offered any physical resistance. How, in a chaotic, fast-moving altercation, can you be so sure of that exact sequence?" Anya let a beat of silence pass, allowing the weight of the question to settle. "Because I was trained to process threat environments in real time," she said. The answer, delivered without a hint of arrogance, sent a subtle ripple through the room. The prosecutor's smile tightened. "Trained? What do you mean, trained?" "I mean," she continued, her eyes locked on his, "that I am conditioned to isolate and analyze acoustic and kinetic signatures. I heard the sound of Deputy Miller's knuckles striking the boy's jacket, a flat, percussive thud, a full 1.2 seconds before I heard the sound of the boy's hands making contact with the deputy's arm in what was clearly a defensive motion." The prosecutor blinked momentarily, thrown off his script. "You heard that over the sound of traffic and shouting. Yes, Anya said. My training focused heavily on sensory prioritization in high-stress scenarios. Judge Thorne leaned forward, his irritation now plain. What is this nonsense sensory prioritization? Ma'am, you were a civilian bystander. Anya turned her head slowly to face him. My status as a civilian does not erase my training, Your Honor. It simply dictates the context in which I apply it. And where precisely did you receive this extraordinary training? The prosecutor pressed, trying to regain his footing. Anya held his gaze. Fort Bragg, she said simply, and other facilities that don't have names. A new wave of silence. The prosecutor hesitated. He glanced toward Judge Thorne, a silent plea for rescue. The judge had gone still, his eyes narrowed, staring at the file in front of him as if hoping to find an answer there. This was not the witness he had expected. Ma'am, we are not here for a lesson in military jargon. Thorne snapped his voice sharp with frustration. You will answer the questions you are asked and keep your personal history to yourself. Then perhaps counsel should ask a question? I haven't already answered, she replied. The room froze solid. The air crackled. The power dynamic, so carefully maintained by Thorne for 2 decades, had just fractured. It wasn't her words. It was the chilling, absolute certainty behind them. For the first time all morning, the judge looked at her and saw not just a witness, but a problem he didn't know how to solve. In the back of the courtroom, a man in a nondescript grey suit, who had been observing the proceedings with quiet intensity, discreetly tapped a message on his phone. Asset is active. Codename Cassandra. Judge is hostile. She is proceeding by the book. Stand by. Thorne, masking his discomfort with a fresh wave of aggression, leaned into his microphone. Let me be clear, Ms. Sharma. This is a court of law, not a military debriefing. I don't care about your resume. I care about the facts as they pertain to this case. Understood, Anya said, her voice still infuriatingly even. Which is why I would like to submit my full, unedited audio recording of the incident into evidence. She reached down and produced a small Pelican case. Inside lay a high-fidelity, covert audio recorder. This device was active on my person throughout the encounter. It is time-stamped and has an unbroken chain of custody, which was logged with the court clerk this morning. The prosecutor was on his feet instantly. Objection. Your Honor, this is an ambush. We have not had a chance to authenticate this recording. Anya looked at the judge, her expression unreadable. The recording captures Deputy Croft telling his partner, and I quote, just say he went for my gun. They always believe that one. I believe that is highly relevant to the court. Thorne's face, which had been flushed with anger, now drained of all color. He gestured weakly to the bailiff. Play it. A click, a moment of hiss, and then a voice, undeniably Deputy Croft's, sharp and clear in the silent room. Just say he went for my gun. They always believed that one. The silence that followed was a physical entity. It pressed in from all sides. Leo Martinez, the young DA, stared at his laptop, his face a mask of horror and disillusionment. His lead counsel stood frozen, his mouth slightly agape. Judge Thorne slammed his hand on the bench, not with the gavel, but with his open palm. The flat, fleshy sound was one of rage and panic. This recording is stricken from the record. It is unverified. It is inadmissible. Anya's voice cut through his tirade. calm and sharp as a scalpel. A full unredacted copy of that recording was submitted to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division this morning under federal whistleblower protection. There it was, the kill shot, not delivered with a shout, but with a quiet statement of fact. Thorne stared at her, his face crumbling. He looked to his aide, to the bailiff searching for a lifeline, but there was none. Their faces were blank, their silence a verdict in itself. His authority hadn't just been challenged, it had been systematically dismantled. This court is in recess, he stammered, shoving his chair back and practically fleeing the bench. Anya stepped out into the corridor. She walked to a secluded alcove and made a call. "Go," a clipped voice answered. He attempted to suppress the primary evidence, she reported. "He is compromised." "Acknowledged, Cassandra," the voice replied. "New intelligence has been forwarded to an internal contact. Check your secondary channel." The line went dead. She returned to the courtroom, to a scene of quiet chaos. Lawyers whispered in frantic huddles. Journalists were typing furiously. Leo Martinez was staring at his laptop, where a new email had just arrived from an anonymous encrypted address. He opened it. It was an audio file. He put on his headphones, his eyes widening in shock as he listened. When Judge Thorne returned to the bench, he looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "Before we proceed," he began, his voice thin. It was then that Leo Martinez stood up. "Your Honor," he said, his own voice shaking but clear, "the state would like to make a motion." The lead prosecutor shot him a venomous look, but Leo continued. "Pursuant to Judicial Canon 3E1, which requires a judge to disqualify himself in a proceeding in which his impartiality might reasonably be questioned, I am making a formal motion for your recusal." Thorne stared at him aghast. "On what grounds, counsel?" "On the grounds of a recording I have just received," Leo said, his courage building with every word. He unplugged his headphones and played the file for the entire courtroom to hear. It was Thorne's voice from a phone call a week prior, speaking to an unknown party. "The witness, Sharma, is a problem. Make sure the DA's office buries her. Discredit her testimony. I don't care how you do it. This stays in my house." The courtroom didn't just go silent. It ceased to exist. All that remained was the damning echo of the judge's own words, a confession of conspiracy and obstruction of justice. The live stream feeds, which had been humming with speculation, now exploded. Reporters were no longer whispering. They were filing breaking news alerts. Thorne was speechless, his face a grotesque mask of disbelief and fury. He had been outmaneuvered, outflanked, and surgically defeated in his own sanctuary. Anya Sharma stood slowly. She didn't look at the judge. She addressed the room, her voice carrying the quiet weight of a final, unassailable truth. For 20 years, this courtroom has operated under the assumption that power is a shield, that it can protect you from consequence, that it can silence the truth. She paused, letting her words sink in. Today we are reminded that true power does not need to shout. It does not need to intimidate. It simply needs to be present. The truth was always present in this room. You just chose not to listen. She turned and looked directly at the crumbling judge. "The oversight you were so worried about, it's here." He didn't respond. He sank back into his chair, the black robe that had once been his armor, now looking like a funeral shroud. The unraveling was complete. They didn't applaud. They didn't cheer. They watched in stunned silence as a court officer approached the bench and spoke quietly to the judge. Thorne nodded, once a broken, mechanical gesture. He didn't even reach for his gavel. He just stood a man, stripped of everything, and walked out of his own courtroom for the last time. An official memo would later confirm his immediate suspension and the launch of a federal investigation. Anya stepped down from the stand. Her posture was the same. Her expression was the same. Nothing about her suggested victory, only the quiet completion of a mission. As she walked down the aisle, Leo Martinez met her gaze. Who are you? He asked, his voice full of awe. She paused and offered him a small, rare smile. Someone who believes in the rules of engagement, she said, and then she was gone. She left the courthouse and disappeared back into the fabric of the world. No interviews, no headlines with her name, but she left behind a profound lesson. In a world of noise, corruption, and blustering authority, sometimes the most powerful force is a single quiet voice armed with undeniable truth. The story of Anya Sharma reminds us that systems are only as strong as the lies that protect them, and that one person with enough courage and skill can pull the thread that unravels it all. It's a testament to the idea that true strength isn't about how loudly you can roar. It's about having the conviction to stand still in the storm and let the truth speak for itself. Thank you for watching. If you were moved by this story of quiet courage, hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. For more stories that challenge the powerful and inspire the brave, make sure you subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time.